It's an honor to have you online. Join us for this moment. Because of the challenge of internet connection, I will request that I switch off my video so that I can be able to sustain myself throughout this call. So kindly bear with me, but it's such a great excitement for us to have you here together with us on this webinar. We have a team of panelists who are well seasoned that are joining us today, but I've also seen that among the people that have joined us, we have our regional director for UNESCO for Eastern Africa, that is Mrs. Anne-Therese Dongjata. You are very welcome. And all the other colleagues who have joined us, we respect the protocol and we welcome you to this webinar, which is titled Reflection on Girls' Education in Africa, in view or in line with the International Women's Day. It has a very interesting buzzword or theme, which is Choose to Challenge. And we have the hashtags as in the information that was shared, that you can be free to tweet around the world. But in terms of the background, we know that every year we celebrate the International Women's Day on 8th March. And the theme for this year was Choose to Challenge, which of course explains a lot of things because we are living in a challenged world and we need to be very, very alert. And it's a challenge for us to, or a call out to address issues of gender bias and inequality and so on and so forth. So a lot of this is going to be discussed in our webinar today, but I don't want to take a lot of time to preempt what is going to be discussed. So as I welcome you, I'll just zoom into the objectives as to why we're here today, and basically to reflect on the education reality of the continent for girls and young women, recognizing the International Women's Day theme, which was Choose to Challenge, and then share challenges and achievements in girls and young women's education in the continent. And also, finally, we hope to explore opportunities and strategies for empowering girls and young women in Africa through education. We are moderating this webinar in English, and please bear with us, but we are so happy to see all of you that have joined us today from the government sector, from the partners, from various stakeholders, teachers, educators, students, and so on and so forth. You can utilize the chat to let us know who you are and where you're coming from, so that at least we can take record of who is present in the house. We have about an hour to have this dialogue, and I'm probably going to request our panelists. We have 5 panelists who are going to introduce themselves to us briefly. I think it would be an honor just to have their voice heard just before we commence. So, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite Christina just to tell us about herself. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. My name is Christine Juta. I'm an alumni of the AUCF STEM Ambassadors Training Program, presently in Zimbabwe. I'm a PhD student at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Pleasure to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. May I request Rita to introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Very nice to see you all online. My name is Rita Bisunat, and I head the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. And then we have Christopher Foley. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, if it's good morning where you are. My name is Vigdis Kristofoli. I am a counselor working on education at the Embassy of Norway based in Addis Ababa.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Vigdis. Now I'm going to request Doris to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Doris Mpumu, and I am Save the Children AU representatives, as well as the director for the AU Liaison and Pan-Africa office based here in Addis Ababa. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Doris. Now we have my director, Yumiko Yokozuki. May you kindly introduce yourself, at least to see your voice and your face.
Okay. Thank you very much, Victoria. My name is Yumiko Yokozaki. I work for UNESCO's Category 1 Institute, International Institute for Capacity Building in Africa for teacher development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And those are our panelists today. I'm going to request that as we listen in, you can type your views, your comments in the chat room, but we are going to also have a moment of question and answer, and we'll be discussing some of the, and reflecting on some of the things that will be coming out. So I'll request also that in case you are not talking, you can mute your microphone, and sometimes videos can be interrupting. In case you're not the one sharing, you can still switch off the video component for your team so that we can be able to focus on the presenter. And I'll do so myself. So without wasting much time, allow me to invite Christina, who is going to have her reflections on this year's theme. The theme is about choose to challenge. May I hand over the floor over to Christina in 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Once again, it's a pleasure to be in this platform discussing with all of you. And I wish all the women and girls in this platform a wonderful International Women's Day. As we celebrate Women's Day this year, we have a theme, which, as Victoria mentioned earlier, for this year is #ChooseToChallenge. And I think it's important for us as we celebrate International Women's Day this year to be reminded of those inequalities which we choose to challenge. And I hope that the discussions in this meeting today will give a deeper analysis as well in terms of what is prevailing on the ground. We are aware that before COVID, there are a lot of extensive efforts that were being made across the continent to address various challenges and stereotypes which have been entrenched within our society that disadvantage women and girls. And the COVID pandemic has really set us back significantly in terms of how far we're going in meeting our targets. And I think it's important for us to understand right now that, for instance, if we are to look at a young girl, Maggie in London and Taku in Zimbabwe, they're all competing for the same opportunities and for the same jobs. But what skills are required to be competitive on such a global scale? And I think it's important for us to understand how uniquely disadvantaged African women and girls have become, especially in light of this COVID pandemic. So it's imperative that we also understand that COVID has widened the already existing inequalities in terms of education, further demands digital literacy, but this requires access to ICT infrastructure, as well as access to electrification, which is still a pipeline dream in many areas. So it's important for us, I hope in this discussion, we're able to highlight some of those skills as well, which are required, the skills gap which we want to close, because in order for us to make the choice to challenge the status quo, we need to be aware of how disadvantaged certain women and girls are. And also, as we choose to challenge, let us also remember and applaud the positive efforts of those who have been standing up for us, those who have also shown resilience in light of the COVID pandemic. We've seen women at the forefront of a number of initiatives, homeschooling, we saw community pop-up schools in a number of areas. And I think that also needs to be applauded, that while we are not yet where we want to be, we are not yet where we aspire to see women and girls in Africa, we should also acknowledge and clap hands for ourselves for the work that has been done already. And to say, as we move forward, let us make that conscious choice to understand that choosing to challenge the unique stereotypes and the disadvantages that young women in Africa face is a process and not an event. Yes, we celebrate International Women's Day, but we need to continue to choose to challenge and to make that choice to challenge these inequalities on a daily basis. It's a process, and let us remind ourselves that it's really about changing our frame of mind, understanding how we view ourselves in perception, in comparison to others, and understanding that yes, women and girls do deserve equal access to opportunities as men and boys do, and also equal opportunities that women and girls across the world also have access to. So I hope that we are able to make that choice to change and to challenge the status quo one thought at a time. And I hope that this discussion will raise critical issues and provoke our thoughts as we choose to challenge. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Christina. Thank you for those insightful words. Remembering the women at the forefront, acknowledging those that have challenged the situation in a unique way, challenged the stereotypes, and also ensuring that we have equal access and opportunity for especially the young women. That's quite interesting. And now let me just move to our next panelists. Please keep the comments coming in the chat room, just in case something excites you or you have a comment or an addition or a reflection. So I'm moving to our next panelist, who is Rita, and she's telling us, why are we afraid to embrace women political leaders in Africa? She's talking about that. Over to you, Rita.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How nice to be with you this morning, this afternoon, to talk about the strides made in girls and women's education in Africa, especially in this week of International Women's Day, on the theme, Choose to Challenge. I mean, we are at a time where we can sit down and say, yes, we have done a lot. We have made strides in women empowerment, in ensuring that girls have access to schools. And even now, as we are going to secondary schools, we are having increased numbers of girls going to secondary schools. We have made a leap, even in completion rates. So we are showing progress in those areas. But we are still, we are still having problems, even though we are seeing reduced maternal mortality rates. We are seeing more women in professional and technical jobs, more women in parliament. But for me, a big question remains. Is the number of African women leaders at the helm of our countries? How many African women head of states do we have today? Can we count in our continent? We don't even have 10. In fact, we have 9. And out of those 9, 5 were really presidents or prime ministers. 4 of them were only acting or only in temporary jobs. Is it because our continent is afraid to embrace women heads of states? Women are largely invisible or lacking from high decision making, policy and governance circles in Africa. Because why? Because we face a lot of pervasive and subtle attitudes and beliefs that portray us women as being unequal to men, whether it be at home, at work, or in the government. And yet, research has shown that when women are involved at high levels of leadership or in governments, we respond effectively to crises in ways that support gender equality. And we know that when women's engagement in governance and leadership is meaningfully promoted, not only does it create ripple effects on all spheres, but it makes economic sense. We have seen during this COVID pandemic that most of the countries having women leaders at the helm have been able to respond better to the health impact as well as the socio-economic repercussions. We can take countries such as Ethiopia, Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, where those women leaders have been widely recognized for their speed, their determination, and effectiveness of the national responses in their country to COVID-19. We know as a fact that women invest up to 90% of their income back in their families compared to 30 to 40% of men. So investing in girls and women rather than just tagging them along creates long-term social and economic benefits, not only for individuals, not only for families, but for communities at large and for countries at large. Our institution, the African Union International Center for Girls and Women's Education, we have now over 200 alumni of young women and men, and you have just heard Christine, who is one of our alumni, whom we are very happy to have here and proud to have here today. We have trained them, we have been training them for the past couple of years in the areas of leadership, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, TVET, entrepreneurship, digital literacy, financial literacy, and soft skills, such as public speaking, communication, but also discussing about gender norms and stereotypes. I think it is very important for us to talk with our younger generation and to make them aware of the role that they play as key actors and at grassroots level so that they can influence on their own the mindsets at their own levels in their communities, in their countries. These workshops, these dialogues also may hinder harmful practices that women access and girls access to women's education, such as FGM, domestic violence. And I would like to also to add that those youth capacity building workshops that we have held have also led to a lot of our youth getting better jobs, getting to be more known in their countries and at maybe international level. I think the theme of this year, Choose to Challenge, could not be more relevant in these times. We are presented here with a scenario where we have to rethink how we should level the playing field. From a continental point of view, this theme provides a plethora of opportunities for African governments to launch a broad, all-inclusive approach to policy making and rebuild a caring, humane, and sustainable manner, implicating stakeholders with our member states, civil society, development partners, private sector, financial partners, etc., but under a multi-stakeholder approach. And this gives each stakeholder the ownership with the moral obligation to ensure that every girl and woman is on board for bigger challenges that they face in their society. If we have more women at the center of not just governance, but also shaping social and economic orders, chances are that we will be able to build a more resilient, human, and ethical future for all of us. I am convinced that Africa's ability to bounce back from this pandemic largely depends on us safeguarding our gender equality. Thank you very much for listening, and happy International Women's Day again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita, for those wonderful insights in terms of what we need to do to bring on board more women. And it's quite interesting that we have only less than 9 women in leadership positions in Africa. And the more reason why we need to put them at the center of governance. And thank you for training these young girls into leadership. We really appreciate what you're doing. Allow me to move to the next presenter, who is the director for ICBA, Dr. Yumiko Yokozaki, talking about teachers' roles and the challenges thereof. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Victoria, and thank you, Christine and Rita. This will make it very easy for me to continue my discourse, which is a role of teachers. Like many other people in surrounding women and girls, and in fact, men and boys, teachers play a very important role. I'm going to ask for your permission to turn off my camera because internet is not quite supportive today. So, yes, many societies, including Africa, people are afraid of embracing women leadership because it is not a stereotype of woman. My own country, I don't want to say anymore, but we are very, very behind in women's role in the political and the social leadership. So it is not just economic development. It is more rooted to history, culture, and so on. So role of teachers, especially role of women teachers. It is very important for young women to have role models and somebody they can talk to, somebody they respect, and somebody who can reduce their stereotypes they already have in their own mind. And also, this is very important at the secondary school level. That's when young girls become young women, and then they will start thinking about their future. So women teachers are very important. However, sadly, when you are in the primary school, there are plenty of female teachers, but when you go to secondary schools, very few female teachers are present, especially in rural areas. I would like to share with you my experience of visiting such a school. In fact, it was a refugee school in northern part of South Sudan. It was a new school built on the border between the refugee camp and the host community. So that was serving both host community and the refugee population. The new first year secondary class had 40 plus students, but only 4 of them were women, 4 were girls, but very bright and very articulate. Because our flight was delayed or something, I spent, I think, the whole afternoon with them. They are amazing young ladies. And they said that, look, we are just starting our secondary school. There is no male teachers. My parents were a bit worried of sending us, but I convinced them so that I can continue study. And they said that in 3 years' time, we will finish our secondary school. Is there any way you can keep us as teachers or teachers' assistant? If you give us $10 per month, that will keep my parents happy and we don't get married off. I was surprised by, no, I shouldn't be surprised. Girls are always very clever. But I was impressed with their clear thinking and then also their vision. So we spoke to UNHCR who have invited us to come, and then I begged them, please keep these girls as teachers' assistants, because that will give them something to do. They might be able to go to university from there, and also that will bring more young students to come to secondary schools, which you will need to bring the refugee and the host communities get stronger. So I do believe that we have a lot of experience ourselves, but it is always humbling for me to talk to young people because they have ideas. So they are the young girls who already chose to challenge. I hope they will become the future ministers, prime ministers, and presidents, and their future is in our hands. Thank you very much again for this opportunity, and happy International Women's Day in Africa. Back to you, Victoria.
Wow, thank you so much, Yumiko. Thank you for those insights and experiences shared from South Sudan. It's quite interesting. Indeed, our girls need role models, and many are facing a lot of challenges, but thank you very much for highlighting those issues. And allow me to move to our next panelist, who is going to be talking about inclusivity and the challenges thereof, and that is Christofolis Vijdis. Over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator. And dear colleagues and sisters, today, happy International Women's Day. I'm very pleased to, and I'm honored to take part in the discussion today with such a powerful panel and participants. I have worked on girls' education on the continent for many years, past 20 years, and I've been this, of course, as a partner for the Norwegian government, and also for some time as a UN partner. And I would like to say that there, and I think previous speakers before me have also mentioned that there has been rewarding seeing some of the progress that had been made in the area, as well as in the recognition of the importance of working in the field of girls' education on the continent. But the hard work as well has not led us to the end of the challenging road, and it indeed remains much to be done in order to achieve the goal of that we all are striving for in terms of providing good quality education for both girls and boys. The gains that we can acknowledge of the situation of girls in education in Africa and African countries, and that also relates to the important identification of the reasons of why girls are not provided with the same opportunities in education as their male peers often are. There is a general view that governments are very committed to education and to provide education to both boys and girls. And that's the important point of departure. The challenge, though, we face is to find the right how to and the right mechanisms to equally distribute the scarce resources so that they reach girls and boys equally. And this, of course, has to happen through very tough priorities, which will have to be made and also diversion from the business as usual, because we know resources are limited. So the question is, do we know enough, and have we done enough to channel resources to areas that will ensure inclusion of girls in the area of access and learning opportunities? An equally important question is, are we willing to do those adjustments and priorities? Is it possible? I think these are some of the issues we need to look into as we go further. And it also needs to be mentioned that in a pandemic perspective that we have endured over the past almost, well, now 12 months, and maybe more for some countries, we are now extremely worried about its impact, and that much of the gain that had been made in the past decade or two can be reversed by the impact of the pandemic, and effect on education by COVID-19 expected to have much starker impact on girls' opportunities in education than often on boys. And documentation on this is already coming out, and we should also expect to be seeing more impacts on this in the near future. So it's very important that we continue to be very aware of that and have the right response mechanisms in place. On the onward, are we certain that we have the commitment from the key decision makers to identify the marginalized girls and to include them back into the system? That's what we need to look into. The essential is that due to societal, cultural, and traditional structures in many societies on the continent and most other continents as well, girls are excluded, or they are not included in many important social, political, and economic spheres. There's a conviction that they should be prioritized as second to their male peers if priorities have to be made. So in the school, we see the tendency of exclusion. Girls may enroll in the primary lower grades, but often drop out early, and especially when they reach the age of puberty, when they're expected to take up traditional gender roles. And at this point in their life, they are expected to care for their family, broadly speaking, and marry and or give birth to children. So these expectations affect the school as the institution, and teachers and academic staff, of course, as well. But the school's role is to take part in efforts that lead to behavioral change here. Much of the expectations, though, are also embedded in cultures and traditions in the community. And we know that if girls are allowed to stay in school through essential adolescent year, they are likely to complete not only the basic education cycle, but also to transition into secondary education. They also have gained skills that contribute to the family and community, in addition to be eligible for the job market and to take part in important societal and political tasks. So a little bit backward looking there, a question that we should look into is to consider for the development of the education sector to become more inclusive for girls, is our engagement focusing enough on quality, inclusion, and diversity outside of the classroom? Do we make sure to sufficiently include communities, religious leaders, family members, and healthcare centers, for instance? Do we focus our efforts enough to link up our work with other sectors that contribute to the necessary change of behavioral behavior towards and fight stereotypes that hinder girls' active participation in education and the society overall? And that tools gives us society overall, and those tools that gives girls the opportunity to take the right decision for their lives. Also, do we make sure to include and to come across with the right language for gender equality as we address these issues in community settings? Are we able to convince parents about the importance of their daughter's education? The goal is to convince girls and boys, women and men, that gender equality and girls' empowerment has benefits for the whole society, men and women, boys and girls. To ensure inclusion of girls also in the learning process, we should work more on the research on education content that leads to constructive collaboration and respect across gender. It's important to work with schools and teachers to help make program and curricula and teacher education gender transformative, so that girls understand that they have the right to fully realize their potential and are already or equally deserving of the skill required to succeed. Education which is truly inclusive leads to better learning outcome for all students. Perhaps the most important task ahead of us is about developing education systems that support all children, girls included, those that are marginalized and hard to reach. I'm so motivated to continue to work on this issue on the continent. We should never ever take gender equality for granted. Every step we gain, we will have to fight for it to remain. And thank you very much. Hand over to you, moderator, and again, everyone, happy International Women's Day. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Victis. Thank you so much. She's from the Norwegian Embassy here in Addis, and really appreciate those insights in terms of inclusivity and prioritizing girls. It's true, we achieved the gender parity in the lower levels of education, but as we progress higher, it's distorted in a way. But I think there's a lot of advocacy that we have to do, as you have highlighted, and also to continue focusing on these issues. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. Please allow me to invite the last panelist. This is Dorothy Doris. She's going to be talking about school attacks and abductions of girls. And the question is, when can this stop? Over to you, Doris.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon, everybody, once again. It's really a pleasure to be on this panel. And with your permission, because my internet is not stable, I would like to turn off my camera. So yes, the theme, I would like to build on what my colleague, my predecessor, Vigdis talked about. We cannot take gender equality for granted. That's a very powerful statement, and I hope that not just those who are on the panel, but that message of gender equality can resonate with the girls who are very far away, who live in marginalized communities. I hope the message of gender equality in education, especially for girls, can resonate with our leadership within the AU Commission, but also within the AU member states. We have 15 active conflicts in Africa. And those 15 conflicts have an impact on girls' education, on children's education, but even more so on girls' education because of the way girls are socialized in our community. We tend to protect them instead of empowering them, or maybe in addition to empowering them. So I will talk about girls' education in conflict settings, why it happens and how we can address it and how we've already been addressing that. I'll give you a few numbers to deal with. We don't have most recent numbers, but about 3 years ago in 2017, there were already over 60 million children, the majority of them being girls, who are out of schools because of conflict. Between 2015 and 2020, there were 3,062 verified attacks on schools, and the majority of those schools are girls' schools. Just last week, we heard 300 girls, over 300 girls were abducted in a community in northern Nigeria. And about 6 years ago, we all remember about the Chibok girls. And still today, we talk about them. So girls' ability to just exercise their basic right to education is always under attack in conflict settings. And that's in 2021, we continue to experience that. We know that girls and boys experience conflict differently. Of course, on one hand, girls are at a far higher risk of sexual and other forms of gender-based violence, including, of course, abduction and child marriage. On the other hand, boys are much more likely to be exposed to killing and maimings and recruitment for soldiering. So a gendered impact of conflicts, especially on how that affect children and girls in particular, is very important and cannot be taken for granted. Attacks on girls' schools are among the few violations targeting girls which do not happen in the private sphere, because, you know, the other forms of violation, sexual violence, happen in the private sphere. But here, attacks on girls' schools, as I just described, are one of the few violations targeting girls which happen in the public sphere. However, they are often a direct attack on girls who step outside of restrictive gender norms and expectations. In some cases, violent extremist groups, and we just mentioned the Boko Haram abduction of girls in northern Nigeria, have clearly stated their rationale for attacking girls' schools. This could be a warning to girls not to go to school, or demand that teachers and parents close girls' schools, or try to restrict mobility and dress codes for women teachers and girls attending schools. Some of these attacks have been driven by entrenched and regressive norms around gender, girls' roles, and value in their community. That's why I'm so happy that Vigdis talked about not taking gender equality for granted, especially in the education area, because, yeah, we're still not there. So in such setting, a common perception may be that girls' value derives solely from their marital and reproductive capacity or caretaking roles, and that their behavior and presence should be confined to the private sphere. This is not new. It was already described 25 years ago in the Beijing Platform for Action and the Beijing the Beijing Declaration. So in many cases, attacks on girls' education are motivated by fears surrounding the potential role of education as a catalyst for social, cultural, economic, and political transformation. Power hierarchies based on age and gender are threatened by the premise of quality rights. Focus. I will stop. Wait until I have the floor.
Let me try if I can use this. Then, sorry, James. Oh, great. It's done. Please go ahead. Sorry, Doris, about that.
No problem. So I was just saying that in many cases, attacks on girls' education are really motivated by fears of the potential role of education as a catalyst for social, cultural, economic, and political transformation. The power hierarchies based on age and gender, especially gender, are threatened by the promise of quality rights-focused education for all girls, which should ideally lead to the development of relationships and institutions that protect and promote substantive equality. In reality, the exclusion and marginalization of girls within, what Rita talked about, political, economic, and legal and sociocultural power structures at all levels, the family, local communities, national, means that girls are often unable to demand equal access to human rights or to effectively hold duty bearers accountable for human rights violations. And here, access to education, basic education, is a human right violation. So the cycle of impunity, perpetuates and reinforces the subordinate social status of girls, which persists into adulthood, and it is often passed on to the next generation. And that needs to stop, especially 25 years after the implementation, the adoption and implementation of the Beijing Declaration and the Beijing Platform for Action, as well as the CEDAW Convention, but also the Maputo Convention, which calls for gender equality in all spheres of life between men and women. So how do we make sure in a context, in a conflict context, to ensure that girls' education is secured? So I would like to talk about some work we've been doing around the Safe School Declaration, which was adopted in 2015. And the Safe School Declaration is an international commitment that expresses support for the protection of students, both girls and boys, teachers and their schools during armed conflict. It really stresses the importance of continued education during emergencies, especially including for girls, as something that is often interrupted. In the African Union, we have now 28 member states that have adopted the Safe Schools Declaration. A number of them are implementing it at national levels, but the level of implementation is inadequate. We need to call for stronger implementation and really accountability through the Peace and Security Council. So when we have these violations, when girls are abducted, and when girls' schools are attacked, this should be a crime against humanity. Because they are preventing these girls from accessing their basic right to education, which will open doors on many other opportunities. So my challenge, I choose to challenge member states to make sure girls' education is taken for granted going forward, and gender equality in education is taken for granted. I will stop there, and happy Women's Month. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doris. Thank you very, very much for also bringing to our attention that we already have some work that is in progress. We have the Safe Schools Declaration, and also alerting us that 28 countries have been, or member states have been able to sign up to that, even though we need stronger implementation at the national level. Colleagues, we are going into an interesting session, and this is about questions and answers and reflections. There's a lot that has been said. And like I mentioned, I'm going to request that if you're not speaking, you switch off the video, but also you mute your microphone to allow us to sustain the bandwidth because we are soon ending the call. So there are quite a lot of comments that have come through the chat room, very exciting comments. Allow me to just quickly go through them, and then we shall have an open discussion. The very first one was from the director for UNESCO in Eastern Africa, which was talking about, that is Antares Dongjata. How can we ensure the growth and progress in girls' education? How can we ensure that the growth and progress in girls' education impacts on the opportunities for girls and women to acquire higher education qualifications and employment in decision-making responsibilities? And then this was specifically addressed to our panelists, that is Rita, Yumiko, and Christine. And the key thing is that what can we do differently? Over to you, colleagues. Any one of us can begin. It was addressed to Rita, Yumiko, and Christine. Feel free to tackle it, anyone.
Thank you very much for the question. I think it is very important. I think it is it is something that we keep thinking. How do we ensure that we have more women at higher decisions of leadership, whether it be in political decisions or whether it be at the political level or other decisions. And here, I think it is very important for us to see more role models. We do not see enough role models, or if there are role models, we need to make use of them. I think each of us in our different organizations need to put forward. I think we need more to show off our women leaders in inverted commas. I think we do not use enough of our human power, maybe or use the sisterly attitude as men do. We need to make sure that we show our sisters compassion by showing off their talents, by showing off what they do, and these become role models. Those ladies, those women become role models in the communities, in the countries. But of course, we have to focus on, and of course, Yumiko will talk about this, is we need to focus on quality teaching and learning. And quality teaching and learning environments is key if we want to have women go up to the higher education level. We know that today we only have 1 girl out of 5 who finishes secondary school, and we are still, working towards increasing those numbers. So until we are able to ensure that the curriculum is more gender friendly, more gender neutral, instead of having those stereotypes, instead of having those gender norms, we will not be able to have more numbers. So really focus on this, on the gender sensitive teaching and learning environments, having more role models, we need more mentors. We need to be mentors to our sisters. So I'll leave it here and let maybe Yumiko and Christine take over. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Yumiko. Yumiko, over to you.
Sorry, my microphone was off. Sorry, I can't use the video. And thank you very much, Anne-Therese, for this pertinent question. I simply add a few things for to what Rita said. We have a stereotypes everywhere, schools, family, media. We need some kind of gender audit to make sure that we have a less and less. Again, it's not easy, but I think we can start from school. We should really start from school. Gender sensitive or gender responsive pedagogy and teachers' attitudes are terribly important. When my nephew came back from preschool and he said that he fell, he had fallen, and then he told the teacher, who is a Catholic nun, "I'm a boy, I don't cry." And this this teacher smiled and said, "Girls don't cry either, so go on." And this is wonderful because teachers can teach these attitudes from preschool. We must start making schools as a place for gender empowerment, gender responsive pedagogy. Thank you. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you very much. Maybe just to add on what has been highlighted already by Dr. Rita and Yokozaki, just to say that really the power of mentorship cannot be overemphasized. And while we mentor women and young girls, I think it's also important to ensure that we do this along with also creating an environment in which they are going back into a world that has men and boys who are also equipped to understand these changing dynamics in our society. And I'm very happy to notice that, for example, the AUCF alumni comprises both young women and men. And I think that is exactly what is required in many capacity building programs or many empowerment or mentorship programs that tend to focus only on women and girls and then sort of leave out the young boys who then grow up to be men who continue to perpetuate these inequalities on young women and girls. So I think it's very important as well from a mentorship perspective. And also, as women rise up the career ladder, many a time they also begin to become inaccessible to young girls and young women. And I think it's important for continued platforms like this, which bring together youth and established professionals to continue to exchange ideas and have a platform for continued mentorship. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Christine, for throwing more light. Of course, there's another issue that was re-echoed here by Fred, who was saying that having more female teachers in the school, especially in the STEM fields, may help inspire young girls to choose to challenge. It's the same voice that Anais echoed from Ghana, saying that, frankly speaking, there are few female teachers in secondary school levels, and especially in the rural areas, where they face a lot of issues such as sexual harassment and other forms of insecurity. Hence the need to make sure that we try to address this issue. She says more in their teacher union, they're doing that and creating more awareness on gender-based violence and supporting the young female teachers in the rural areas. Yes, Doris, you say it is important to share goals and set goals for girls' education with other sectors, and also the aspect of role modeling has been echoed by Brenda, that we need to have role modeling by all leaders across the system, and this is very, very critical if we are to realize more women and girls empowerment. Very interesting contributions and insights. I think there's one which has come through from the chat, that in TVET, we have very few girls that enroll there. So hence the need to have more girls take on TVET subjects. So I want to open up the discussion briefly for anybody who wants to voice it out. You can feel free to raise your hands because we are trying to explore opportunities and strategies for empowering girls and young women in Africa through education. And we are choosing to challenge. So anyone raise your hand and then we can give you the floor. Yes, Anne, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate the discourse and the exchanges. And even though I had said to myself I wouldn't speak, I'm really tempted to speak. And while I agree with the responses, I believe the challenge really should also be that we should be prepared to challenge our governments. They talk about, parity. They talk about equality, and we don't see these things reflected. That women are not in position of decision making doesn't mean that we do not have competent women. So I think the challenge is, as women, we should also be prepared to challenge our governments to always keep that balance. Look at the ratio of women in cabinet. Look at the ratio of women in decision making. And maybe the African Union can help us to really, through their peer review mechanism, continue to, like Vigdis said, not take it for granted. I think we are being taken for granted. And that's why much as women are rising, it continues to be like a chorus. And like for this particular panel, we should have brought a man. In anything we do, let's not just talk to ourselves. Let's bring the men so that they too can talk and join us. I think we must really get the men to be part of this challenge. The other thing also which had worked for Foley, I could recall, was this Mothers Club. I keep saying women also, even at the household level, can make a difference. It's not only the teachers, the mothers should also learn to begin to see that, no, it's not just the girl that should cook, the boys too should cook. And it's not just a stereotyping, it's something that is true for both boys and girls. Let me just leave it at that because it's very interesting, but I think our challenge should be now at the systems approach. We have done a lot of advocacy. Let's challenge ourselves to challenge those who make decisions that exclude girls, right from the home through to government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anne. Yeah, a systems approach and also thinking through the grassroots levels is actually very interesting and it's the way to go. Any other person that has raised their hand, please? I'm trying to look out for any other hand that has been raised. I can see there is a comment also from Anita that the government should prepare a system and ensure that more women in STEM are in STEM and also promote employment of women, I think, along those lines. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anne. Any other voice, a gentleman that is is present that wants to say something? Colleagues, we have about 2 minutes to have this dialogue.
I believe Sedu is there. Sedu, speak up for the men. What should men do?
Sedu. Okay, Irene has a comment. Irene, over to you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Sorry, I kept getting in and out because I had another meeting to attend to. But for the bits of the submission, I managed to listen in. And from the last, I think, submission about involvement of men, I think that is really something we all need, men and boys, if I may say. We all need to begin thinking much as the consequences of the gender-related issues, of the discrimination in relations to equality, inequality, I mean, general service provision in relation to gender, the consequences will get to the girls. If you talk about COVID and its lockdown, girls and boys being out of school, we are so worried about the girls' teenage pregnancy and things like that. And we tend to keep our focus on the girl, like affirmative actions for the girls. And we, with all our good intention, leaving out the boys and forgetting that they're going to grow up, or they're not even just going to grow up into the future, even the current, they're interacting with our girls, and all information is being given to the girls for all reasons that we do appreciate, then the issues that we are dealing with is going to continue. I like the example someone gave for, I think, an ECD or Hollywood education, where the teacher told the child that, you know what, even the girls or even the boys can do that. I think right from household level, we need to begin parenting our children to appreciate the uniqueness of either girl or boy, and nurture them into appreciating that we all, girls and boys, need to have this information. If it's about life skills, let them have the life skills. Let both of them do the domestic work. Let them all be exposed to career making decisions, that you're capable, you can be an engineer like the girl or the boy can be. You can be the president of this country. I remember while I was growing up, I don't know, for some reason, I kept telling my siblings that I'll be the first president of this country. I don't know what happened to that dream, but I mean, I would be able to talk and everyone around me was like, oh, by the way, Irene, you surely can be that, you know? But along the way, of course, as children, we grow and we change our thinking and career and things like that. But I think the whole gender and its issues, if we continue to talk like someone said to ourselves and leaving out the men, the boys, we are going to create, I think, a bigger challenge in the future or even currently. Talking about women, ladies challenging ourselves for even the bigger dreams. Recently in Uganda, I'm speaking from Uganda, we have just ended up our political engagement, elections for the member of parliament and for the presidency. And for member of parliament, right now I'm seeing the candidature, the names. We have that affirmative action for women representatives in parliament, and all the capable women are going for that same position, and they're not challenging themselves for the general MP representation for the different constituencies. And recently I was asking, but why not? You know, and I'm not too sure this is the caliber of people who are saying, oh, but they still need affirmative action. I think they have been empowered. They have been in those spaces. They know what it takes, but they are still competing for that affirmative action instead of giving space for probably this one who need that affirmative action. I think sometimes we miss the point as the development actors, as the women in this empowerment story. So I like the fact that we are beginning to think that, oh, we need to bring the boys, we need to bring the men, and we speak as a society rather than targeting only one side. I submit. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Irene. We take note. Our time is running pretty fast because we had been informed others have got another meeting. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's quite very interesting. Allow me to just invite Rita, Dr. Rita, to just give reflections as we wind up this wonderful session. And please don't go after her. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Victoria. And thank you to all of you participants for coming in and joining us. As we know, Friday is always a busy day and we always are running in between meetings. But we wanted to make this meeting short and sweet to discuss about key issues. And a lot of key issues, I think, came up. And I think one of the really key issues that I want to bring up, in fact, 3 key issues, is what Vic just said. We cannot take gender equality for granted. So I think maybe 3 takeaways from this. Number 1, we cannot take gender equality for granted, because sometimes when you talk to other people, they seem to think, oh, gender equality, oh, that's it. We now have enough women in parliament, we have enough women here and there, but it is not true. And I think, of course, we never forget boys and men. It is key, because they are part of the process. So they are there. And it is very unfortunate that we did not have any men take the floor, even though we do have some men on the call with us. But we should not forget that we are, us, especially the African Union, we always involve boys and men in all our dialogues, as do our other colleagues as well. We should also remember the fact that this is a systems approach, and we should not forget this. So we have, so I think we have been able to discuss very briefly, as I said, it was short and sweet reflection on girls' education in Africa on this very interesting and pertinent theme of choose to challenge. And we have each of us, all the 5 speakers, we chose to challenge different issues that underlie the question of girls' and women's education in the continent. So allow me to thank you once again for being here. Allow me to thank the moderator, Victoria, for moderating so well this session. And I want to say this is the first of a series of dialogues that has been organized by UNESCO ICBA in collaboration with Save the Children, the Royal Norwegian Embassy in Addis Ababa, the AU CFA. And so we are hoping that we'll have some other dialogues in the coming months during the year. So we hope to see you very soon. Thank you very much for being with us, and have a great afternoon or have a great day. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rita. I request everyone to turn on your video as you're exiting. Kindly turn on your video and wave to us. It would be nice to at least see the face that was behind the picture. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see your videos, colleagues, as you exit. And your wonderful, beautiful smiles. Wow, you look great, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Victoria.
Welcome.
Wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Frederick from Uganda.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Nice to see all of you. Thank you, everyone, for coming and joining.